just the jobs are not there. And then when they do have jobs, the government welfare system is such that it doesn't exist a great deal. I mean, it's not like ours where it's just over the top, and ours is flat ruined. But over there, theirs is the other way. They don't have the resources to give away because they spend it all. Their budget is for defense, which they have to have. The Iron Dome missiles are not cheap. Every time they fire one of those things, and last time they fired, they had to stop 3,000 of the Hamas things. So. Anyway, so the Joseph Project gives them, a lot of diapers, formula, baby things, bedding, clothing, and that sort of stuff. We've been contributing to them. Our congregation contributes that on a monthly basis, and so it is a good deal. We've been in part of the Joseph Project almost since its inception, and. So there's that for Jewish ministries. Now the Messianic Jewish lifestyle, keeping the law of Moses. Now what does that really mean? And we get into all sorts of discussions with that with people about keeping the law. What is the law, and how much of it do we keep? Do we do we have like sacrifices? Of course, we don't do sacrifices anymore because there's a pause in sacrifices. There will be when in the millennial reign. Actually, when the third temple is built, there will be sacrifices again. All right, and they're already practicing, teaching the Levites in Jerusalem how to do sacrifices. And so when the third temple is built, and it will be built shortly, I believe, then we'll see the return of sacrifices. Now, during the Messianic, the millennial era, when after Yeshua comes and establishes kingdom on earth, we will also see sacrifices in the temple that he builds. There will be a temple in Jerusalem. He says he will reign from the Holy of Holies, and that'll be his throne room. And so we will see that, and we have offerings. The offerings will be a little different. If you have a sin offering or anything like that, it would be as a memorial. It would not be for atonement, because we don't need the atoning sacrifices anyway, because Yeshua has already done that for us. Okay, and but keeping the law of Moses. Okay, what does that mean? That means things that we can do, and that's another thing that came out of the Babylonian exile, was this thought, this overarching thought that you do as much as you can. Okay, if you can't do it all, well then do as much as you can. And so that's why a lot of the Jewish prayers are an effort to do something in place of the sacrifices. And some of these prayers were actually said in part at the time of the sacrifice. So they just kept the prayers and couldn't do the sacrifice. So that's what we would do. We keep, in this congregation, what I teach is that we keep biblical kosher. Okay, now what does that mean? That means that we don't eat pork, we don't eat shellfish or catfish. Okay, now there is also rabbinical kosher that goes really far into the weeds, and even within the Messianic side of things, there are people that they separate meat and dairy. Okay, they will not eat a meal with meat and dairy at the same meal. And in fact, some are to the point that they have two separate sides of their kitchen, all meat dishes would be in one side, all dairy type dishes would be in the other side, and even separate refrigerators, because you don't put them in the same thing. It can go to that that thing, totally. Dishwasher, sink, the whole 9 yards. And so we don't do that, and I don't teach that, because when I look at the thing that says you don't boil a kid in its mother's milk, what does it mean? You don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. Okay? That's what it says. And if you look at the Hebrew, if you're just looking at the Hebrew now, the early Hebrew, without going through the Masoretic text, which has all of the accents on it, it says the word there is used as halev or halav. We don't know, because there's no nikud, there's no accent marks or vowel marks in there that tells us, okay, what is halev? Anybody know? Milk. What is halav? Fat. The fat. Okay? And so you don't boil a kid in its mother's milk, or you don't boil a kid in its mother's fat. Why? The fat was for the Lord. He said, the fat is mine. Okay? So the idea then that, you could say don't boil a kid in its mother's fat, you don't take that fat for your own and then eat the kid, because that fat belongs to the Lord. Okay? And so when you're doing sacrifices, now when you're cooking at home, you would take and you'd use up the entire animal, but that's where that difference came, because the rabbi said, well, it says don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. There are people that said, well, that's because the people from in the area, the Canaanites, had a fertility ritual that they would boil a kid in the mother's milk, and they were supposed to have some kind of ritualistic fertility kind of a thing, and said, so don't do that. So anyway, that's where that came from, and there's other things that you don't rabbinical about washing your hands before you eat. Well, guess what? That's just good hygiene, and so and some of the other things that. But we don't eat raptors. We don't eat hawks or any kind of a bird of prey, and we don't eat horses or dogs or camels or a lot of things like that. There's no rabbits, no, and the reason for that. And I wondered about that. Why can't you eat rabbits? That's the reason for that. Rabbits, when they eat, they don't digest their food very well. They're not very efficient at digesting their food. So what they will do is they'll go back and re-ingest their waste. And because much of it is still available for digestion. And so God says, that's probably not a real good idea. And plus, if you had a full diet of just nothing but rabbit, you'd starve to death.
I think Bugs Bunny came up with this.
The don't eat rabbit?
No rabbit season.
Yeah, okay. But that's, rabbits are, you don't eat rabbits either. No, yes, ma'am.
What about
Quail?
Did you say bird while ago?
No, I said birds of prey. You don't eat birds of prey. Yeah, you can eat quail and dove. Now, why you'd want to eat a dove, I don't have no idea. But, duck? Yes. I think that you can eat duck. Duck meat, and I've heard some rabbinical sources say you can't eat duck because they got webbed feet. Well, the Bible doesn't say anything about that, but they will kind of restrict you on that. But I like duck. It's a lot too greasy for some people, but I like duck just fine. But those are some of the things that, keeping the law of Moses, and certainly the Ten Commandments. I hear people talk about all the time that, well, Jesus nailed the law to the cross. Well, that's some imagery there that is just false, totally false. That the law still exists. I ask people, I said, okay, what part of the law then do you not want to keep? All right, are children in their nursery as comfortable as adults in their adultery? I don't know. I mean, just it's just, is that part of the law? Well, of course, you keep those. I says, well, okay, then how about where it says that you keep the Sabbath holy? Well, we changed that. I said, how could you change God's word to Sunday? So anyway, that you keep the law as best. There are some things that, yes, you can keep, and there are certain things that we cannot, because, they just don't exist. The idea of our court systems and so forth now are such that they take care of things that in the past would have been taken care of by a Beit Din, the court system within each individual city. That was because they were all run by Jewish people. Okay? So, now, and then what about the Moedim? Now, everybody here, you know what the Moedim are the appointed times. Those are the feasts. Okay? Moed is an appointed time. Now, and that is, these are not Jewish feasts. Okay? The Moedim are not Jewish feasts. All right? Because God said, these are my feasts. He just wanted us to keep them. He gave us the opportunity to get together with Him. He says, look, I'm going to be having a party on, or I'm going to have a function on this date. We're going to call it Shavuot, and you're invited to come. And in that you will bring the first fruits of your harvest from the wheat harvest. You're going to bring these things, and I'm going to be there. You want to be with God, you'll be where I am. And so that's what the feast was. And so that's why when we get together, I get together on these feasts with the full expectation that God is right there with us. Because why? Because Yeshua said, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be there in the middle of them. Okay? So that's what the Moedim are. We keep the Moedim. We keep all of the biblically mandated Moedim. What are those? Okay, that is, that would be Passover, the unleavened bread, the Shavuot, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. Now, which one did I forget? First fruits, HaBikurim, first fruits. And so that Pesach, unleavened bread, first fruits, those are 3. Shavuot, that's 4. 4 in the spring, and then the 3 would be Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur 10 days later, and then 5 days later Sukkot. And those are in the fall. And they are, many of them, rooted in agricultural practices. Sukkot is rooted in agricultural practice. Shavuot was that, first fruits was that, yes sir.
What then is Festival of Weeks?
Festival of Weeks is Shavuot and Pentecost. It's all the same name.
Okay.
It's all the same name. It's like, yes ma'am?
Passover?
Passover will be, that's in the spring. It's on the 14th of Nisan. And it's, it varies, because of our lunar solar calendar that we have in the Hebrew calendar. Every few years they'll throw in an extra second Adar, month of Adar. That's the leap year. And so that's how you get back then to where the wheat harvest and the barley harvest, then that coincides with the first fruits at Passover. Then the wheat harvest coincides with the first fruits of the wheat harvest at Shavuot. Okay? And so that's why the two, why you have that. If you notice that the Muslims, they go strictly on a lunar calendar, and so their book or there's what is Ramadan It's just it's on a 28-day calendar, so every year it's earlier and earlier and earlier. So it's just, and it's no longer rooted in any kind of an agricultural season like ours are. Okay, so let's just go ahead. Are there any questions on this that I've covered so far? I mean, I think most of you are comfortable with enough of just asking your questions. Okay. So, should Gentile Christians keep Torah? Why is this not moving? Let me see if this is okay. Is that doing it? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, should move that over a little bit. Okay, should Gentile Christians keep Torah? What do you think?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know of no, like I said, I don't know of any laws in Torah that. Now there are a few. Okay, let me clarify that. In Torah, it tells us that Jewish men or Jewish boys are to be circumcised. Okay, that is not a requirement anywhere in the Bible for Gentiles. You can if you want to, but okay. And the idea I have seen in certain parts of, especially the two-house movement of the Hebrew roots groups in Messianic Judaism. They teach that men, if you're a believer, if you come to faith, grown man, that you should also be circumcised if you're going to be, because they also believe that if you're saved, if you are a believer in Jesus or Yeshua, then that means that you're Jewish, and so you should be circumcised. Well, that's not what Paul wrote in Galatians, and when you try to point that out to them, they say, well, that's not what he really meant to say. What he really meant to say was like more in the epistle of Barnabas. And I said, the who? And so, okay, I didn't last long at that congregation. I was over I was building a drilling rig, and I tried that one out, and finally I told them, I says, guys, you're good people, you mean well, but you got it, you got it all wackadoodle. And so they says, you don't teach that the men should be circumcised? And I said, no, not at all. Gentiles, you can circumcise your babies if you want to, but no, these guys, they had a place. There was a place in this town that they had a urologist that $500 and tips.
Stop it.
Yeah, Paul and Peter had an argument about that.
Oh yeah, a big argument, and that was in Acts 15. You can read about it in Acts 15. And Peter, whenever they wrote it, they said, and there was no small disputation, meaning that they argued like heck about it. And finally, it was the arguments of Peter and Paul at first disagreed, but then when Peter had the vision and he went and saw Cornelius, that changed Peter's mind too. And so then James, the brother of Yeshua, who was the head honcho there in the Church of Jerusalem, in the Kehillah there, he's the one that says, okay, this is what I feel like that we should be doing, period. And so that's what they did. They adopted it, and then Paul went around on his missionary trips expounding on that. And so anyway, so they don't... Acts 15 was the Council of Jerusalem, it's called, okay? And that's where they made the decision as to what a Gentile would have to do. Because before you could be considered a believer and in good fellowship with the Jewish believers, you had to be a Jew and be circumcised. And so that kept a lot of people outside the door, okay? And so they called them actually proselytes at the gate. because they practiced everything except that they just wouldn't get the circumcision, which that's back in those days that could be a serious thing, and in today's world not such a big deal, but back in those days, the infection and all that kind of stuff, and they just, I know it's a rabbi trail, when they did that, they used a stone knife. They used flint or obsidian stone knife because it's much sharper. They could chip it off and it would be much, much sharper than anything that they could grind down with bronze or steel. In babies and today, you do a bris today, and that the mohel gets in there, and it's done so quickly you don't even see it done, and it's done, and the kid goes, "What happened?" And I've seen kids that they don't even cry. Nothing, and or if they do, just give it to mama, and she picks it up, and the kid quits crying. I've seen quite a few of them like that. So, all right. Any other? So anyway, the Tzitzit. What about Tzitzit? The Bible says that is for Jewish people. A lot of Gentiles have now picked it up and wear Tzitzit. We have them on our talits, it says you should be wearing them on the four corners of your garments. Well, we don't even have four-cornered garments anymore. None of us wear four-cornered garments unless you will wear a katan. A katan is a T-shirt that's basically a poncho that you put on, and it's split on the side so that it has four corners. So it's something that is you have to work at it to have a four-cornered garment that then would qualify to wear. Yeah, a lot of Jewish people wear, and Terrence does. I think Lawrence does. And several people do that have. The strings. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like. Now there's two caveats. It looks like this.
It's a T-shirt with that's split, and the guys wearing the talit, wearing the tzitzit on your belt loops does not qualify. Okay, please.
Can I ask you about that?
Please do not. Please do not. The tzitzit, the tassels, the strings.
These.
Okay.
It's on all four. And you can get. I told people where to get that because I also got a cool Jewish calendar with it.
Yeah,
The
but
point is that Jews do it both ways. Some wear it like I did today, whereas inside my pants you couldn't say I had it on, but I had it on. You will see people that'll wear it out. Some Shabbats you'll see me with this actually out of my pants, and you'll be hanging over them.
yeah,
So
and
for those that think I'm doing belt buckle, I'm not. It's actually hanging over. I tuck it in and then.
yeah, I understand, but there again, that is not, that to me, in my mind, that is not a Gentile requirement. Okay, that's a Jewish requirement.
It's something you can do, but
It's something that you can do, but it's not a Gentile requirement. There are a couple of things that are Jewish identity markers, and that the circumcision is one, and the tzitzit is one. Now, what about the kippah? Yeah, okay. That is not a biblical mandate either. Now, what? Well, and what it comes from is that we're a nation of Israel was a nation of priests and kings. Okay, and so priests were all mandated to wear headgear of some sort, and so they thought, well, okay, we'll just cover our heads like God had said for the priests. So we just that's one of those deals that Jewish men will wear a kippah and a yarmulke or a kippah. Just the Catholics wear skull caps. We don't. Kippah, Kippah, K-I-P-P-A-H. K-I-P-P-A-H, whatever, a kippah. All right. So again, that's not the biblical thing. It's something that we have taken on as just an acknowledgement that we're under God's covering. God is our covering. Now, what about the talit itself? and I don't know if that's in my notes later on or not, but we're on a roll here. A lot of congregations forbid women to wear a tallit. Okay, and you will never see a woman in a tallit in a Orthodox or conservative synagogue. You will see it in Reformed. Okay, but Reformed synagogues, yes, and Messianic synagogues, and I've even seen women wearing tzitzit. Okay, but
Even rare, though.
that's even much rarer. And when they ask me if they should, I say no. All right, so it was a man thing from beginning to end. It was always a thing that men were, in Jewish traditions. I mean, people will try to change things around to meet their Christianity in some ways. I had one guy, because he knew that I can tie tzitzit, and so he asked, and he was going to ask actually Lucas Cooney was tying tzitzit too, and so he would tie them and sell them to people, and so he asked him to make him some tzitzit, but to put red thread in it for the blood of Jesus. And I put my foot down on that one. I told Lucas, do not do that. If he wants to do it himself, it's on him. But you want to take and just lose all credibility with Jewish people. Try that. That's just something that you don't do, period. And so those are the kinds of things that sometimes people they'll get into and try to change our Jewish traditions to meet their Christian concepts as such. Yes, ma'am.
I have been told one time if a woman was not married or she was widowed, then she would wear the tallit. Is that a thing or not? Or
It just depends. Like I said, generally speaking, we don't here. I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it one way or the other. But if a woman is going to make a habit of wearing a tallit, then I ask that wear something that is obviously, definitely feminine, or looks feminine. Pinkish or something like, and something like lacy. Yeah, I don't know. So that if you looked at it, you could say, oh yeah, that's a women's tallit. But if they don't, then I'm not going to get wound up over that sort of thing. That's not a salvation issue at all. And so I don't. There's some things that are not salvation issues that I'll still be a jerk about, but other things I won't. No. I mean, if you were to bring a tallit and wear it in the service or whatever. But generally speaking, if a woman's going to wear something like that, she'll wear a shawl. You'll watch Gabby Jones, and she will have a headscarf put on. When you do your candles on Friday night, you put a headscarf on. Ladies, don't wear a tallit on that. That's why. What is a tallit? It's a prayer shawl, okay? And it's what in the mornings when you get up and you go through your daily prayers and go through the Siddur, you put on your prayer shawl over. When the Bible talks about you go into your prayer closet, that's what that is. You cover, and I've done that. Put that thing on and just hold it over my head so that block everything out when I'm in serious prayer. Okay? And that blocks everything out, and so that's what a tallit, huh?
Is it like what she's wearing?
Yeah, she's wearing mine right now because she was cold. All right? And so that's my tallit, and she was cold because it gets cold in here, and so that's the tallit is that it's not a magical garment. It's not and I would even say that. Okay, now another thing, tallits. You never take a tallit, men. You never take a tallit into the bathroom with you. You never wear. You take off your tallit before you go into the bathroom. Okay. What, took it off before you went into the bathroom? Yeah. Well, you don't wear a tallit. in the bathroom, you know, and it's, huh?
He said you might get something on it, and I said, no, it's really out of respect.
Well, either way, I mean, it could be soiled. It could be soiled, and so that's what you don't. But anyway, that's another thing with the tallit. You don't wear them into, or you don't bring them into the restroom. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Now, getting back to the Gentiles keeping the Torah, I mean, really, when you read the Torah, all of those instructions that God gave us is for our betterment, for health, for cleanliness, for hygiene, for everything. I mean, whether it's the circumcision or what you eat or how you.
Yeah, it was all, I mean, anything that God told us to do in Torah was not something that he did it just out of spite, you know, and make it hard for you. Because what did he actually tell us? He said, he says, you can do this. It's not too hard to keep. He said, the laws that I put out there, it's not too hard to keep. And that's like, and even then, the rabbis have made it too hard to keep, because why? They put fences around it so that okay, making sure. I mean, the idea of it I can understand. Making sure that we don't violate this precept. You know, boiling the kid in its mother's milk. You don't know what that means, but they just keep building a fence around the fence around the fence, and it gets to now where. Like if you were in an Orthodox Jewish community, you would be surprised at all of the rules that there are about. I mean, you don't you put on your right shoe first instead of your left shoe, and you know, you just, there's so many things that you know on Shabbat you don't light you know, punch the button and start turn your stove on. Huh?
You did before sundown?
Yeah, you did all your cooking before, and then you ate cold food all week, Shabbat, you know.
Or you hired a goy.
Yeah, and so the way I look at that is God said that Shabbat was made for man, or Yeshua said that. Shabbat was made for man, not man for the Shabbat. And, you know, even in Jewish life, you never fast on Shabbat.
That's right.
You never fast, even if when Yom Kippur falls on a Shabbat, that's the only time that you fast on Shabbat. The only time. No other fast will be on a Shabbat. The fast of Gedalia, the 9th of Av, some of the minor fasts that we keep during the year to commemorate some disaster, and I mean, how many of them are there? My goodness. You have a fast, but you never do it on a Shabbat, period. Okay?
You didn't cover, you want to do the Lake and house?
I got on that rabbi trail. Okay, now what about Acts 15? And when the Gentiles, and they had this big argument about what do the Gentiles keep, he said, okay, there are 4 things that I want, that we feel like that Gentiles should keep. And that was one of them, that they would refrain from eating blood. Okay, they would not eat anything strangled. They would not eat anything offered to idols. And the 4th one refrain from fornication. Okay, and those were the 4 things that the Gentiles had to keep. Now there is yes, ma'am.
Now, when you say don't eat blood, people ate blood for a ritual, a wicked ritual. I can't think of the right word. Does that mean eating a medium rare steak?
Well, if you were really into some of it, yeah, what they would do is they'll take a steak or meat and soak it in brine, and that pulls the blood out of it, and then you have to rinse it out and so forth. I don't eat medium rare. I mean, I eat stuff now more, I like medium, you know, and but no, that's not what they're talking about, the eating the blood. What I'm talking about is a Scottish breakfast with blood sausage and blood pudding and those kinds of things, where, you know, it's blood that they've coagulated into a pudding. And so, so that's what they're talking about. That, or drinking blood as part of a ritual, that sort of thing. So you don't do that, which was a big deal. That was a thing that they did back in those days. All right, so you had that, and those were the four things. And then it has a little caveat on the end that says, and we know that the laws of Moses are taught in the synagogue on a weekly basis. And so what does that mean? Does that mean then that, that's the starting point for the Goy, for the Gentiles, but they'll be taught all of the rest of the stuff, and then they'll have to follow that later on. And there are those that said, yes, that's what that means. I'm not so sure that that's what that means, but generally speaking, if you can keep those four things, you've gone a long way toward doing what God tells you to do. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe, what about us as, Gentile Christians? Okay, we drink wine or grape juice, whatever it is.
Right.
For the blood of Jesus, remembrance of the.
Right.
Is that okay?
Sure it is. Sure it is. You're drinking. Okay, now some people. No, it's representative, because he said this wine is the cup, the blood. Okay, now is it what's the Catholic word? Trans something or another, where the wine is turned into the actual blood of Jesus. That sort of thing. And no, it's not. The bread is not turned into the actual flesh. Why? Because it's prohibited to eat human flesh. It's prohibited to drink blood. So it would never be that. It was symbolism that of the red wine, his blood, and the bread, his body. Why? Because why? The Torah. He was Torah. Okay, he wrote Torah. He was the Word. The Word was with him. The Word was in him, and nothing was made that was not made by him. Okay, first verse of John. And so, throughout the Bible, it talks about Torah, of eating the Torah or consuming it, making it part of your body, to where when you eat something, if you eat a piece of bread, well, the molecules in that bread becomes part of your body. And so it talks about eating Torah or consuming Torah to the point where it becomes part of you. All right? And so that's that imagery there of being part of that, having the Torah as your own part, and so in your own body. And then later, Yeshua says, there will be a time where we don't even have to teach Torah, because it's going to be in you. Yes, ma'am. Communion? Yes, we do. Okay. Oh, yes, we do that. It's just, we try to do it on a monthly basis, but we were going to do it this weekend, and then as it turned out, or last weekend, something, we got disrupted here because of we were supposed to meet over there, and then they tell us Thursday night, oh no, you can meet over here, and it gets us all Yeah. Well, that's what happened, is that they told us Thursday night. Yes, sir.
You had a sign-in sheet for last week. Are we going to do a sign-in sheet every week, or just?
Thank you for reminding me of that, so we can go ahead and just put your check mark. No, thank you. Okay. Now the questions are not interrupting. Okay. This question: are Messianic Jews Zionists? Well, I hope so. I hope so. We believe that Israel is for the Jewish people, and they are not occupiers. They are the land. They are the people. These other people are interlopers. Okay, so and they shouldn't. They should just thank God that they're there and not. Okay. Yes, we are Zionists. That goes without question. All right. So let me see if I can get back. I don't know if I'll ever get back into my notes or not. All right, so we do keep all of the. Let's see. All right, we kept.
You did the feast.
Yeah, we did that. All right, now what about prophecies about Yeshua? Now, when you look on the table in there, you know where the tzedakah box is, where we put our offerings. There is a thing here. Okay, have you looked at that? Have you seen that? This piece of paper here. These are prophecies, Old Testament prophecies. We use these over in Israel to witness to people. Old Testament prophecies on here, and then the New Testament fulfilling of the prophecy about Yeshua. And so you will see that's got, I don't know how many it's got on there. It's got a bunch of them. But prophecies about Yeshua. The biggie, you know, he'd be born in Bethlehem, and then you see in Matthew exactly where that came about. Messiah would be more than a man. He was God in a man form, and that was prophesied, of course, in Isaiah. You see all of those things, and I think I've got I know I do. I've got everybody's email here. So what I'm going to do is I will send you all of my notes on this part of it, and the slides too, so that you'll have all of this stuff, so that and then you can go back and look at it, because
Share with your neighbor.
I'll send them all to you. Yeah.
Send it if I don't have.
Send it with your mom.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So the Messiah had to come before Jerusalem was destroyed, of course. And, you know, we see that in Daniel. And then, of course, it was in Luke, it talked about that. Messiah was a direct, yeah, here. Well, that's not my pen. I don't know who, okay. Messiah was going to be a direct descendant of David. And we see, you know, those were prophesied in Jeremiah and Isaiah. So then all you got to do is see Matthew 1, and it shows that's where that came about. Okay, yeah, because I know some of the people here they had already told me that they had to be out of town today. So, and that's the one good thing about recording all of these things. So then you can go back and look at them. Like I said, if you fall asleep during this. Okay. Another prophecy, you know, that he's going to be tried and unfairly condemned, and even though he's perfectly innocent. So we know that happened. He would die to make an atonement for the sin of Israel and the whole world. And so those are the biggies. And Messiah was to be a light to the nations, so that God's salvation could reach the ends of the earth. That was in Isaiah 49:6, and then he was going to rise from the dead. And that's why, you know, a lot of times in Messianic congregations, I've been in Messianic congregations where they say, well, we don't celebrate Easter because that's Ishtar, and that's a Canaan, a pagan, and so. And, you know, all of that kind of foolishness. And that is just what I think is foolishness, because if we don't celebrate his death and his resurrection, then we might as well be Buddhists or Muslims, okay? Or, yes, ma'am.
I think celebrating the resurrection is absolutely great, but the pagan traditions that they have added to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know. Listen, I did a teaching I'm not going to mention the church, okay? I just did a teaching at this denomination, and they wanted me to do, yeah, we know which one it was, okay? It was, and they wanted me to do a Passover demonstration. And so he says, okay, good, you got 10 minutes. I said, what? 10 minutes. I said, this could take me, you know. And so he said, well, yeah, but that's the only time we got, because we got our Easter egg hunt after this.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they in the back of their service, they had this guy dressed up in a big bunny costume.
Oh, no.
Yes. And so yeah, oh boy. I was really not a happy camper after that one. Just yes, sir.